Hi, everyone. It is Ryan Fowler here with my good friends Tim Costello and Jordan Kurtz. And welcome to Inner Game Group Live. We have a great one today. We're going to the hardcore nitty-gritty neuroscience today of what is the actual process, this scientifically verified process, although these techniques have been used as early as 1895. We'll go on into that as well. But what is the actual process to instant rewiring of the deep subconscious core beliefs? They're going to be referenced as schema here. That's another term these doctors, professors, scientists use. So when you hear schema, that's a core belief, and they'll go into what that is as well. And then the hardcore science has been discovered. They even talk about lab experiments with rats and what they did. And so it's going to be very interesting for discussion today. This is Dr. Tori Olds, and we have quite a bit to weigh in on this and to add to it as well. So it's going to be a great show. But before we dive in, Tim and Jordan, welcome to the show. Jordan, introduce yourself, then Tim.
Hello, I'm Jordan Kurtz with Jordan Kurtz Hypnosis. Currently, I am looking for founders who sell, and so we're going to help you remove any anxiety or panic or difficulty you have with the emotions of selling. So that's like talking to clients, like procrastinating, reaching out to clients, struggling closing, things like that. So that's what I'm been focused on for a while now. Well, welcome new next Zoramina P-Dubs. Thanks for joining.
Jordan, how you feeling today? Doing well?
For the most part. My nose has been getting I'm still a little stuffy, but I am off of all my medications. So that is for my nose. So that's a big improvement. I've been working with another hypnotist to slowly reprogram, rewire allegedly the neurons in my nose and brain that are responsible for my constant nasal issues. So because after all of your testing basically comes back negative, you ultimately arrive and might be a psychosomatic issue. Might be a
it's interesting. First of all, I'm glad to hear that you're getting better, because I know suffering with illness for a long time is no fun.
Yeah.
But just in Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score, he met a number of patients that after they completely medically cleared these people, there was still something that they were suffering with. And he found that to be the same way, psychosomatic, that there was trauma trapped in their body somewhere. So glad that you're achieving it and curing it and healing it and all those other kind of words we can't use. But since you're doing it to yourself, you can use them all. So good
That's
to
true.
know. Now, one of the things I love about this video is it's 6 years old. That's the kicker right there, is that I don't know if we'll make it to the end, but she talks about this is a new breakthrough in the science of psychology, et cetera, and hopes that the psychological industry changes and all that kind of stuff. We know that's not going to happen because the pharmaceutical companies, insurance companies, corporations, et cetera, are set up to live in the world they live, which is how all the money flows. And she's talking about something that goes outside the normal insurance routines. I love what she's going to talk about. Ryan picked a great topic for today. It is what we do, although we don't talk about all this day in and day out. It is very important. And this little bit of information today, supported with Huberman's neuroplasticity and Ryan's series on super neuroplasticity, brings it all together, and it's what we do and why it's so freaking effective. So freaking effective. So take it away, Ryan.
Yeah, and you're going to hear her say in this video, so 6 years ago, 2019, she says, until about 15 years ago, science didn't know the brain certain parts of the brain, the parts we need to change, what we change, can be changed. They thought it was static. And so she's framing these techniques as they're cutting edge, but I did some research with AI, and really because I just knew, I'm like, hypnotists don't have the protocol for rewiring your brain. I'm talking just hypnotists who only study hypnosis. They don't have the full protocol quite down. They have it mostly down. And what the science did is really flesh out the protocol to find the most effective way to do this. We've taken it even further. But the roots of what we're talking about today was actually discovered back in 1895 by Paul Breuer. There's a book written called Studies on Hysteria. And Paul Breuer and Sigmund Freud. You remember, everyone knows Sigmund Freud, and his second book he ever wrote was with Paul Breuer, and it was a book about hypnosis. Yes, Sigmund Freud was a hypnotist. So we'll get more into that later. They say this is new to science, and yet hypnotists have been doing this imperfectly, but they've been doing this. So Ryan Harrison, welcome to the show. So it's going to be an interesting discussion, but this lady has a lot of really great stuff to say. And the scientific research for the last 25 years has fleshed out and added to an understanding of how to rewire our brain. And it's very important to rewire your brain because no one's subconscious mind, no one's deep down belief systems, which is the lens we look through the world at, no one's is perfect. And when you change these beliefs, even if you're 80% there and then you get 95% healthy, 98% healthy with what we do, you see a very substantial, if not completely massive, improvement in your quality of life and ability to achieve and get what you want, and also feel good about yourself while you're achieving it, before you achieve it, during, and after. Next week, we're going to do an episode on imposter syndrome, which is about people who become mega successful, very successful, and yet they're still kind of tortured souls. So what we believe subconsciously to a large degree is independent of what it's not completely independent, but it is somewhat from what we achieve in life. But when you get this stuff down, you'll not only be able to achieve more, but just feel way better. So let's go ahead and dive in. You want to queue up Dr. Tori Olds. Really great. She is one of the forward thinkers. Really love her stuff. Go ahead and cue that up, Jordan. And then we will just get started. The clip's about 15 minutes. The link's in the description at the bottom. Everyone should watch this on their own time if we don't get through it all today, because it's really core stuff. So let's go ahead and get started, guys.
I remember when I was first starting out as a psychologist, my father gave me a piece of advice that he'd gotten from his mentor. And he said, remember, people don't come to you with their problems. They come to you with their solutions. So now, if I see someone, for instance, who has a rage problem or a problem with criticizing themselves or overeating, I think, how was raging or overeating a necessary solution to some problem that they faced? So if you're wondering, how could raging be a solution to a problem? Well, let's say when that person was young, his father would target his younger brother sort of with aggression. And the one way that that child figured out to protect his younger brother was to sort of engage dad with his own anger so that he himself became the target. So the problem then would be little brother getting hurt. The solution would be the rage. So these learned solutions exist within these little maps of reality that teach us through experience what to expect from life and how I should respond. And we call those little maps our schemas. And again, there's two parts to a schema. It's what to expect and how I've learned to respond to best protect myself or protect my group or get what I need. So these schemas are by default unconscious. Why? Because they exist in something called implicit memory. If you learn about this in school, remember explicit memory would be like learning and remembering what the capital of France is. Implicit memory would be more like learning to ride a bike. So let's say when you're learning to ride a bike, your brain is having experiences that teach us things. For instance, when I feel a slight shudder on my right side, I need to slightly lean left. Now, that is not consciously learned, but it is stored and useful to our capacity to ride a bike later on, even if we couldn't verbalize that that is something that we learned.
Let's
And in
go
the
ahead
same
and
way
pause
we
it
learn
real
how to ride a
quick right
bike,
there.
we sort of
Good
learn
point.
the
And so she's talking about how our subconscious works. Our subconscious does stuff automatically. Sometimes we just know we need to do something, like I want to drive to the grocery store. And you've done it so often, you can just do it on autopilot. Like there are people, they'll drive somewhere and then they think back and they're like, you know, for 2/3 of that trip, I was zoned out. And yet I still got here.
Yep.
And I was zoned out, and you shouldn't be zoned out because that is somewhat more dangerous. But nonetheless, people will zone out driving, and they still stop at the stoplight, but their mind's like completely elsewhere. Well, why? It's because your subconscious mind just automatically knows how to do it. You know, when you ride a bike, you don't cognitively think about all the little things you need to do it correctly. You just kind of intuitively do it, and then your subconscious mind takes over, helps you out. And a lot of things we do, we're not even consciously thinking about doing it. We just do it. And so that's what implicit memory is. And it's there's our core beliefs, which are tied to emotions, that we're in a situation, emotion automatically comes up, and then it directs us, that emotion directs us to behave a certain way. If we're afraid or we're anxious, it directs us to avoid things, to procrastinate, self-sabotage, this type of avoidant behavior, put things off. And so we're just following the emotion. We may not even know why the emotion is there. And that's what she's talking about. This, you know, a patient comes in and gets angry all the time, and he doesn't know why. Turns out something happened as a kid, and it fixed a problem when he was a kid, and he's still playing it out, and now it's causing problems. And so our subconscious is interacting with us, guiding us, helping us out, or it thinks it's helping us out. And more often than not, it is. But we just don't cognitively think about it. It just, sometimes we don't think about it, period. Or sometimes we think about it, but we don't have to worry about all the little things we need to do to successfully accomplish something. It's already in our subconscious helping us out. So I want to point out that interaction you guys have between the conscious and subconscious. Do you have anything to add?
Absolutely. So what Ryan just described is really important, because we are guided. 90 to 95% of our decisions that we make throughout the day are 100% guided by our subconscious. So like Ryan talked about driving to the grocery store or going somewhere, you already know the route in your head, and you already know how to drive a car, and you know just about how far ahead of a turn you need to put your turn signal on. And you can do all this without even thinking. This is very adaptive behavior. You know, when you're in a meeting and people are saying things and you're writing things down and processing things through your head, there's really an adaptive way to respond. What we're talking about needing this memory reconsolidation is going to be the maladaptive behaviors. These are the things based somewhere in your past on toxic shame, and it happened over and over and over again, and your mind has figured out a way to protect you. Even if it's not a very wonderful way, it's doing it because it thinks it's protecting you, and it will continue to do it. You know, when you get triggered, you wonder why you get mad at that thing. Well, because it works for you. I every once in a while, I get at the end of my day and I want to watch a couple of really stupid videos. And it's usually involving somebody getting arrested for stealing at Walmart or Target or who knows what.
Dude, I was thinking about that exact same thing, except I
And
was
you know
thinking
what's
about
funny is Carrie will go, why do they act like that? I said they act like that because they've acted like that a lot, and it has got them out of some situation somewhere, except the police don't respond the same way their mother, son, husband, cousin, teacher, neighborhood bully, whatever responds, right? And it's the constant yelling and screaming, I didn't do anything, and how dare you, and all this kind of crap, right? It's worked for them before. So their subconscious says, keep going with this, even though consciously you know that them peeps are going to put you in handcuffs and you're going in the back of that squad car if you continue to behave that way. But you can't stop yourself because your subconscious is driving that behavior. That's what we're talking about. And that's what the doctor referred to in the beginning is somebody gets raging all the time. They do. Why? Because it works for them. It's kept them safe. It's kept them protected. So they think. It's really limited their worldly view and worldly behavior moving forward, but it works for them and keeps them somewhat safe. Anyway, there's a thought for you.
It doesn't work for them now, but they could even be saying, why do I keep doing this?
Yes.
I'll tell you, I have, I always have I'm aware of some really low level subconscious programs I have that are not helpful, but they're just so infrequent and so minor. I just don't go in and clear them. And one of them is, whenever there's a problem with my computer, I get angry at my computer. I'm like, this piece of blah, 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 blah. It does, but I know it's tied to what happened to me as a kid. What's that?
That's just impatience.
No, I think it's actually a subconscious program that served me as a kid. It doesn't serve at all now. It doesn't help at all now. What's that?
I wasn't diagnosing. I was just kidding.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. So, yeah, you're right, Tim. But things that helped us as a kid, now we're adults. Now we're in such a different situation.
Yeah,
and it's not helping us now.
Correct.
And that's why. And your conscious mind is like, why the hell do I keep doing this? Why the hell do I keep doing this? Well, it's because you have implicit memory and it helped you before, but it's not now because adult life is way different than child life.
Yes.
You could have actually been powerless as a child and you're not powerless now, but you're still acting like you are.
Yeah, because you think you are.
These people getting arrested, they threw tantrums this is actually very common when you're raised by a single mother. And again, not all single moms are like this. I'm talking collectively, but without the father in the home that doesn't, and again, some fathers do put up with bull crap from the kids, but the general tendency is dads don't. Dads are like, cut it out. There's going to be consequences. I don't care. The moms are more nurturing. And when you don't have this dual parenting style, a lot of single moms or kids will throw tantrums and the moms will back off or they'll make excuses or they'll try and placate the kid, whatever. And that worked for that kid. Now the kids at Walmart an adult, 40-year-old, 30-year-old, 25, whatever, and they're throwing the same tantrum they had as a kid when it worked with their single mom because the dad wasn't around to lay down the law. And now it doesn't work. Now they're in jail. Boom. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
100%.
I can tack on something here. So
Excellent.
So I noticed that the first word she uses is schema, and it sounds an awful lot like what the terms we use, which is a subconscious program versus a subconscious schema.
It's just different terminology, exact same thing.
Yeah. Exactly. And and I really like the first thing she said, which was they come in with the solution. And I'm like, yeah, that's if they come in with rage or they come in with some sort of fear. I really like that mindset of, well, it's actually the question that the hypnotist asked me this week. I think this is why Ryan probably wanted to start here, which is, he asked me about my nose issues, and he's like, well, he asked me, well, how long have these issues been there? And I said, my whole life. And he said, well, do they need to be there? And I'm like, I'd never asked myself that question before. And for some reason, my intuition just told me, yeah, I think they do need to be there. Of course, then the next question is, well, why? Why do they need to be there? Well, usually it's because they're serving some sort of purpose, either to keep you safe or to protect your ego, or they're serving some sort of protective purpose generally. And so she brought up the example of someone who comes in that's full of rage or full of anxiety. And her first question was, well, what purpose do these things serve? Or in other words, do they need to be there? And in most cases, they feel like, yeah, they do need to be there still. Well, I guess not still. The next question is, well, do they still need to be there? Perhaps they served a purpose at one time, and can we convince the subconscious mind to let that go? Because you now realize, well, this once served a purpose, but we don't need it anymore. And so that's why sometimes I like that phrase maladaptive subconscious program rather than negative, because I don't like to place, I feel like negative is a little too judgmental, because it's like, it's almost like judging yourself for being a certain way. And of course you have to have consequences to your actions. If you're in Walmart stealing stuff or getting arrested, you can't escape from that. But ultimately it's like, when you oftentimes in hypnosis, when we have the client acknowledge, like, yes, this served a purpose once, but I'll give it permission to leave now. That's usually how you can let it go. So that's all I got to say.
Good.
All right. We'll keep on going.
Oh, the video. All right.
Yep.
And are we good? Still good here, or where we are?
Yeah, let's just keep playing.
All right.
It's only
Emotions
a 15-minute
of
clip,
being-
so we'll just go through as much as we can.
All right.
Being human. And they're not conscious, again, because they exist in the same way that learning how to ride a bike exists, in implicit memory. Now, till about 15 years ago, scientists believed that implicit memory couldn't be changed. So therefore, our field looked for ways to sort of override or control that implicit learning. And forms of therapy like CBT were created to teach people how to use logic or develop a logical idea and try to control the more implicit knowing or override it, so that implicit knowing wouldn't have so much control and they could regulate their emotions and behaviors more effectively. And that creates something called incremental change, which is a good thing. However, now we know we can actually go into the implicit learning or memory itself and update it. And when we do that, we get transformational change. So by transformational change, I mean when the symptom or struggle disappears and remains gone without continued effort or a lot of maintenance. So let's look then at about how to change implicit memory. But first, just go over again how memory gets stored in the first place. So an event or learning happens, and for a short time stays in short-term memory. If it's trivial or not important to us, then we will forget about it. But if it seems important to our future survival, or if it's like emotionally charged, then it will be more likely to go into long-term memory, which it does through a process called memory consolidation. You see, memory sort of exists in like a neural net that holds a pattern, like the pattern holds the elements of that experience or memory together and secures them into place. And in fact, it's through the consolidation process that sort of gets secured in so that pattern can be stabilized. So just to give a metaphor, which is just a metaphor, so don't take it too seriously, but it's something like, in our computers, when we have the information, we're editing the file, and then we kind of close the file. We may even condense it into like a zip file, but then it's in a less editable format. So implicit memories are like that. They're a little enclosed, and in order to change them, there's a way in which, just to use a metaphor, it's like to unzip them open the file, and then bring them back into more a format that is workable for making edits. So as
Can we
I
stop there
mentioned,
for a second?
scientists
Yeah,
used to
that's a good part to stop.
So one of the things I'd like to add here is that she talks about recalling the memory. And what's most important, let's just first all say, many people have been through things that they don't want to really recall. They're tremendously painful and probably on top of that, really embarrassing because to their brain, they think it's their fault. So they don't really want to relay that. We don't need to know exactly what happened. What we need to know as hypnotists and following on this subconscious routine, we need to know how you feel about what happened to you, because I can never change the memory, but I can certainly disconnect the emotional feeling with that memory and rewire that emotion for much more positive impact. So it's really key for everybody listening that watches this video on the replay, etc. Don't be embarrassed by what happened to you, because likely it is not your fault. In fact, 99.99% it is not. So you don't need to be embarrassed about it, even though you're going to want to be embarrassed about it. I get it.
Yeah.
But what we need to do is deal with the emotion, because that is the thing that's triggering you back to maladaptive behavior. There you go.
Very good, Tim. And American Zombie. Yes, we're doing the deep stuff here. I want to kind of clarify some stuff. These scientists, doctors, psychologists, etc. Some of the words they use, and it's kind of like, oh, what's that mean? Like schema. What is schema? You know, some words are words we know, like memory, but they use them in a bit of a different way than your average person uses them. So I want to clarify what she means when she says memory, because you are correct, Tim. In order to rewire the subconscious mind, the memory itself doesn't change. So let's say, you know, as a kid, something traumatic happened, and that led you to believe certain things. And then that led you to have certain defense mechanisms. So anytime you're in a certain situation, you now automatically do something that doesn't serve you as an adult, but it helped you as a kid. That's where we've been thus far in this discussion. So we go in and we fix the belief, the defense mechanism, whatever, and the negative feelings, whether it's shame, anger, whatever, that really messes people up. We fix that, and yet your memory stays the same. You still remember, oh, when I was a kid, this happened. So I don't like how they use the term memory here, memory reconsolidation. Really what they are talking about is everything around the memory, which is, I remember that, you know, again, whether it's in your, whether you consciously recall it or not, we have these memories tied to these subconscious programs. This happened as a kid, but what we change is we change the meaning of that memory. We change what that, you know, because this happened, it means this. So she's going to talk in a bit about how our brain has, you know, predictions. It's because this thing happened when I was a kid. Now I'm in a similar situation. Our brain, based on that original memory, is going to predict, because that happened as a kid, this is going to happen as an adult, and I need to behave this way. This is all subconscious. It's the meaning, it's the interpretation of what an event in our memory means and what we should do about it that we change. So we don't change the actual memory, and Tim is correct. There are, it's helpful to go back to an initial memory when you're 3 years old, 6 years old, 8 years old, whatever, to change the belief and the behavior that started at that point in time. It's helpful, but yeah, it's actually not necessary. If we map out what your belief is in your subconscious, saying, hey, when this thing happens, when it, you know, when let's say, for example, you were a kid and you had to give a presentation in front of class and you froze and then everyone laughed at you. So now as an adult, anytime you're going to do public speaking, you're terrified, Let's give that as an example. We don't need to go back to when you were a kid and did this public speaking. We just need to trace down, okay, now you need to do public speaking. You're terrified. We need to figure out, what is the belief there? What do you think is going to happen? And how will it feel if it happens, if you do this public speaking? And you say, oh, yeah, I feel if I got to do this, you know, it's part of my job. So I have to do this speech in a week in front of 300 people. And I'm terrified. Okay, what's the worst that'll happen? Well, you know, I'm going to freeze. I'm going to lose my job. Everyone's going to think I'm a loser. They're going to see I'm a fraud, that I'm not as smart as everyone thinks I am, that I'm a coward, you know, that I freeze. So it's all these negative beliefs tied to this original childhood memory. And now your brain notices a pattern match for what happened as a kid. It's what you feel is going to go wrong, what it means, all the painful feelings tied to it. That's what we rewire, not you're still going to remember what happened to you as a kid, but the meaning around it is different now because we changed that. So when, you know, we talk about memory reconsolidation, it's a neuroscientific term. They call it predictive error mismatch memory reconsolidation. There's also emotional memory reconsolidation. They're talking about all the stuff around the memory, not the memory itself. I don't know why they do it. I think it's dumb. I think they should use different terminology, but I want our audience to understand what they mean when we're talking about memory reconsolidation. Tim's right. That original memory stays the same. We don't even need to know what that original memory is to rewire your brain, although it is helpful if we call up that memory.
And you know what's funny, Ryan?
Yeah.
Is I've had clients after we finished our session and we're just sort of shooting the breeze afterwards and refreshing. They've told me then what happened, but I didn't want to tell you before. That's why I know evidentially that they were embarrassed by whatever. But once the emotion is gone, it's just a memory. It doesn't trigger. It doesn't bother them. And now they say, oh yeah, you know, I didn't tell you this because it was awful. I was embarrassed. And, you know, but that's cool because I didn't.
Now they're not embarrassed, so they can tell you now.
That's right. There is no
shame. You got rid of the
Right?
embarrassment.
That's right. There's no shame.
Got rid of the feeling. Yeah, it's great. That's a very, very good point, Tim.
And I like her analogy of how many times have we used this analogy, like we're dealing with computer viruses, and she kind of, and she uses a slightly different analogy. She uses the analogy of you have all these little files in folders, and it's almost like you are compressing the file into a zip folder, and it's a lot harder to edit on the surface. And so she talks about how, I guess I'll full screen myself.
Yeah, keep going.
It's kind of like she compares that to how CBT kind of works, where it's like you're trying to work on the external files around that zip file by trying to use that, was it the implicit or the explicit memories to kind of, you're not actually touching the root issue of the thing. You're not actually unzipping.
You're managing it.
Folder. You're right. You're managing it. And I think kind of the idea is that over time, some of that work starts to seep down further into your core. But of course, I think when you use that computer analogy, you can see, well, of course, the best thing you can do is because you can change those implicit memories, as she says, it's much easier to, and she calls it transformational change. And I think that's what Tim and Ryan and myself all experience with clients, that they have just transformational changes because we are unzipping that folder and actually going in, or unzip,
rewriting the source code.
Exactly.
Completely rewritten.
Yeah. Unzipping the file, removing the bad file, putting a new file in, and zipping it back up again.
And science until early 2000s did not know you could do that. Although hypnotists had been doing it, like I said, since 1895. We'll talk about that a little later.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like, I mean, the hypnotist.
Sigmund Freud was doing it.
Yep.
and then he
Yeah.
switched to psychoanalysis. And I just think because the optics of hypnosis look bad, they look so woo woo, and they're like, I'm a scientist, or I can't be doing this woo woo stuff. Although the scientists who did it got amazing results. And if you think hypnosis is woo woo and not backed to science, ask Google. It'll tell you it's backed by science. And I just point out the co-chair of the psychiatry department at Stanford, which is consistently ranked top 1 to 5 in the world in psychiatry, psychology, and neuroscience, all three. The co-chair is a hypnotist. He's a psychiatrist, huge on hypnotism. He's a hypnotist. David Spiegel, Dr. David Spiegel. It is evidence-backed. And one of science's biggest shortcomings is because it seems too woo-woo. They've ignored stuff for over 100 years that hypnotists maybe didn't fully understand the theory, but in practice, and again, not at full effectiveness, but still rewriting source code, hypnotists been doing that since 1895 or even earlier. So,
yeah. And I think, and some people they're skeptical of like regression and like how accurate that stuff, and not everyone believes in, I guess, some of like the past life stuff. And so it has, if you have a subject that has too many seemingly woo-woo elements attached to it, people usually ignore the actual base of what you're doing. So which is unfortunate.
But the science now that's explaining memory reconsolidate, the body keeps the score. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, the #1 best-selling psychology book for like 10 years. And it's all about, this woo-woo stuff is real. There's trauma in your body. When you feel stuff, it means something, and you got to address that. You can't just use logic. That's what cognitive behavioral therapy did. And it's really, we were wrong. Oh, crap. So now they're coming around to what we do. They're just not using hypnosis. They're doing everything but we use hypnosis, and we, what they're doing now accelerates the results 10x. And then you put in certain types of hypnosis, doing the right way. We accelerate it 2 to 5 times on top of that. Yep. So eventually they'll come around. Hopefully. We'll see. Yeah.
All right. We can keep rolling here.
Believe that once these implicit memories were sort of secured into place, that they could not be changed. But in the early 2000s, they started to wonder, well, does memory really just consolidate and that's it? Or does it ever open again for new learning? And if it did open up, possibly through simply being activated, it would need to be reconsolidated to get secured back into place. So they began just kind of starting with the assumption that reconsolidation maybe is a thing, and seeing if they could interrupt it through using a protein synthesis blocker, since actually the process of consolidation happens through protein synthesis. So if indeed the memory did need to be reconsolidated after being triggered, then a protein synthesis blocker would interrupt the reconsolidation and therefore disrupt the memory. And actually, that's what they found. They found that they could condition a mouse to fear a bell. So that's implicit learning. Fear conditioning would be an example. Trigger that memory by sounding the bell, introduce the protein synthesis blocker, and then that thereby disrupt the mouse's ability to sort of reconsolidate the association between danger and bell. And through doing that, through that chemical method in this case, they found that the fear conditioning actually could be erased. And the fact that it might be possible to change these memories is really good news. Now, if you're thinking it sounds kind of scary, like eternal sunshine over the spotless mind kind of thing, it's not like that at all. We're not trying to change people's autobiographical memory or their like conscious recall of the events of their life. More what's being targeted is the unconscious beliefs about the nature of reality and how I must respond that were gleaned through those experiences.
Just pause real quick.
To update our.
See, now she's saying beliefs. We're not changing your memory. We're changing your beliefs. Just call it beliefs, you dumbasses. Anyways.
Well,
you know,
Yep.
that's what I'm talking about. They'll take a word everyone knows and they use it in a completely different way in the scientific context. Come on, stop confusing people.
I don't
Just call
know.
them core beliefs. Good grief. Sorry, go ahead. I'm done.
I'll play devil's advocate. I think she is assuming that the beliefs and the emotions are, when she uses that term memory, I think she is assuming that the beliefs and the emotions and the feelings associated with the memory are like in one package.
Yeah, they cluster them
Why
together.
didn't she say that then?
Yeah, so they cluster the emotion, the interpretation of when this happens, it means this other thing, the belief, all of that. They cluster that together with the memory, which is your recollection of what actually happens. But then she has to clarify, we don't change that actual memory. We change everything clustered around it.
I think she's, I don't think that's exactly what I meant. I think what I meant was, you remember how you felt back then. You remember the associations that you made.
True.
You remember
Absolutely.
the
so
feeling of being
emotional
terrified.
memory. But
Yeah,
even that is too reductive because it's not just the emotional memory. And one of the reasons we are so effective is we work on the cognitive narrative. When this happens, it means this. And there's a whole narrative there cognitively. And then there is an emotion tied to it, the emotional memory. And that is correct use. Emotional memory is a very accurate description of the emotion. That same emotion you felt when that thing happened, you're recalling now and it's spiking now. That's very accurate. But
and if you're triggered again, that exact same emotion comes out.
Yeah. And they say, hey, this thing happened when you were a kid, and it leads you to now predict anytime you're in a similar situation, your brain is predicting, well, this happened when I was a kid. I'm in a similar situation now. I predict this will happen next. That's accurate, but it's too reductive because, again, a lot of trauma is not tied to predicting what's going to happen next. A lot is. I'd say the majority is. Oh, I froze in front of class. Everyone laughed at me when I had to give a presentation in front of my class when I was 6. That traumatized me. Now I'm terrified of public speaking. That's prediction. Geez, I have to public speak, and my brain is predicting this horrible thing will happen because that's when I happened when I was a kid. Now I'm terrified. I'm avoiding it. I'm procrastinating it, blah, blah, blah. That's your brain predicting something bad will happen when, honestly, it likely won't. And that causes problems.
Right.
But it's not just prediction, because sometimes you have a false core belief. I'm not enough, period. I can't get what I want, period. And it's chronic. You can feel it chronically, and it's not even triggered by anything. It's just there. Now, it can still be triggered and go to 9, 10 out of 10. But when people have chronic depression, which I had, you can have nothing going on and still feel the depression. It's not getting triggered. It's not a prediction. It's not when this happens. This will happen is I am worthless.
I think it's
independent of
hypervigilance.
any events. And so
I think it's hypervigilance to pain and fear.
Yeah. There's I would agree with that. That you, like, I had chronic anxiety, and that's tied to hypervigilance. Anything can go wrong at any moment.
Yep.
And that's because I grew up in a household where I was, emotionally abused out of the blue in an unpredictable fashion several times a day, or at least a few. NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, mom, and brothers who were bullies, and some other stuff. But I when they start talking about we have a prediction system in our brain, yes, we also have more. Sometimes there's stuff there 24/7 in you. What's up?
Yeah. Everybody was fighting for survival in your house, no matter what it was.
Yeah.
And you just had a different personality than them, and they from you.
Yeah. So a core identity can get triggered in certain events, but it's still there 24/7. It's not tied to I'm in this situation, something's going to happen. It's there independent of that, although it can get triggered and made worse in certain events.
Yeah.
Anyways.
which is actually one of my, if you read my instructions for identifying your subconscious programs that Ryan helped me write, that's actually one of the 3 symptoms that I mark at the very beginning, which the first is constant experiences, like Ryan was just talking about. The next one was triggered reactions. And the third one was avoidant behaviors. I'm trying to avoid this thing so I don't feel something negative. Triggered is X happens, I feel something negative. Constant experiences is I always feel a sense of anxiety, depression, dread, like I'm unsafe, things like that.
Yep.
So, man, we're really smart, Ryan.
Telling you, man. I'm telling you. That's why I hang around with you guys.
Thank you. The science is very useful. The science is figure out stuff that kind of adds to what I do, but they're still not 100% there in some areas.
Right.
They're not, but they have figured out some very important things. And hypnosis, if you look at regression to cause, and it's also called affect bridging. Back in 1895, Sigmund Freud and Paul Breuer, both doctors, it's a Sigmund Freud you guys are all thinking of. They wrote a book on hypnosis, and they noticed that when you arouse the traumatic emotion, that if you keep walking it through them over and over and over, the symptoms eventually disappear. Well, that was really the beginning of what now neuroscience has fleshed out a lot more. And what she's talking about today, this memory reconsolidation technique. They got it about 60, 70% of the way back in 1895. And hypnotists who use affect bridging or regression to cause, it's just when you go back to a traumatic childhood memory and you reinterpret the belief tied to it, and you basically are taking the root issue, the root core belief, all of that, rewiring it. They got it. There was an article written in 1971 in the Journal of Experimental Hypnosis, and I think it was a Fitzpatrick or Fitzgerald, but he started, that's where the regression to cause or affect bridging technique I just described was first talked about in a peer-reviewed journal. That was in 1971, and they got about 80% of this technique now. And then you hear her say, "Oh, we thought the brain couldn't be rewired till 15 years ago." So the science in some ways now has really helped flesh out. The science now is like 95% of the way there. But they weren't the first to discover this. Hypnosis had about 80% back in 1971, 60, 70% in 1895. And they were getting results and they were helping people, and science ignored it. They ignored it. They also ignored psychedelics, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, these psychedelics can be really, really, really helpful." And it's like, yeah, you freaking outlawed it, you a-holes. You made it illegal to use, and honestly, there are side effects to some psychedelics. You have to be careful with some of them. They're not anywhere near as bad as fentanyl or cocaine or anything, but you still got to be careful with some of them. So I just got to call out the science. It's made some really useful contributions. At the same time, man, modern science is it's politicized. It's messy. They're overly reductive. They're overly specialized. And so you have these people focusing on your cognitive brain to fix the whole system. That's cognitive behavioral therapy. Doesn't work that way. You work on the nervous system, the emotions, the narrative. You work on everything. And even though neuroscience since the early 2000s has known this stuff has worked, maybe 5% of psychologists, 10% tops use these techniques.
Right.
The rest are still doing CBT. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like, what the hell? Your own science knows there's a better way 25 years ago, and 5 to 10% of practitioners, if you're lucky, maybe 2% of 1% of university courses in 1% of universities cover this stuff. Ridiculous.
Now let's talk about how they work in consonant. If a psychologist came to me and said, how could you help my practice? I said, well, number one, you're going to be the most successful psychologist in the state because you're going to partner with me and I'm going to clear the trauma from your patients. And then you're going to help them reprogram their behavior just from the bad habits they've generated over the years. I said, people be banging down your doors to get in your practice because the word will spread that you're the most effective person around. So what am I saying? I'm saying just sort of what Ryan's saying is that if all of the regular practice psychiatrists, psychologists, marriage and family therapists, licensed social workers, etc., engaged us and or our techniques to clear the trauma from their clients, guess what? Their own practice would be that much more effective because now they're dealing with an authentic person and can actually help them very, very quickly. So that's what we take away from all this is that everybody can use it. It's not exclusive to us. And no matter who uses it, it's very, very effective.
Very effective. And just go on the video section of my YouTube channel. I just uploaded a compilation of 10 people I helped. It's I'm actually going to replace it with a shorter version that shows 11. This isn't just getting rid of internal issues. We can actually optimize your belief system so you get really great results. And this is not a guarantee. This is an observation because not every client has experienced this, but many of my clients, big increase in income. I've had people double, triple. I tripled my income or 2.5x. And then I had 1 year, I quadrupled it. And then I started doing this.
Self-reporting.
Big increases in performance, success in relationships, happier, more productive, not procrastinating, getting stuff done, more charismatic, more confident. This is really an optimization performance tool. It's not getting you to normal. It's getting you to your best self when we rewire like she's talking about. Get you in an optimal state. And I guess we'll keep going.
Sure. I just, side note, I really like the way her script, or I don't know if she wrote the script, but I really like the way she speaks. She speaks very clearly. She speaks very very digestible and clear to understand.
Despite me ragging on science, I have a very high opinion of certain scientists, and I think she's great. I think she's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, and she's a practitioner too. She actually sees clients and all of that. She's not a researcher. She got her doctorate. Now she's helping people. So she's great. Dr. Tori Olds.
So now that we've had about 15 years of memory reconsolidation research under our belt, it's pretty clear the sequence of experiences that the brain needs in order to activate memory reconsolidation without the help of chemical aids. So first, of course, you have to bring that memory into an open state. That is accomplished first by activating the memory again, called reactivation, so triggering it. And two, by introducing an experience or information that disconfirms, that proves the belief held in that memory is incorrect. So once that happens, there's about a 5-hour window where that memory becomes what is called labile. That means it's open to being changed. If in that time frame, an additional experience comes that once again disconfirms, they call it disconfirmation or error prediction, but it proves that that original perspective of or belief about reality cannot be true. When that comes, then that information is taken in and actually updates, either completely changes or at least just updates and tweaks the original schema before it gets once again reconsolidated in a new format that more accurately maps to the reality of the present moment. So
Let's
to
stop right there
summarize,
for a second.
the two
I love
key ingredients are reactivation and disconfirmation.
I absolutely love that description. So when we're in hypnosis and we trigger that emotion and to the point where it's very painful for many clients, crying and moaning and that type of thing. The way we disconfirm that is we simply say, this feeling is a lie. This feeling does not belong in me. This feeling has never done anything to benefit me or serve me. We literally tell the mind that this is a bogus feeling. And then we strip it out, clear it out, and then reconfirm the real feeling should be that, number one, you're freaking awesome. You're a diamond. You're phenomenal. If other people can't see that, who cares? That's their deal, not yours. I mean, we literally disconfirm and then rebuild what that belief should be. And that's what's key. I just explained in real simple words what she just explained in real big words. But I love how she explained it.
Yeah, and hypnotists did not 100% have this process, but they had about 80%. This regression to cause or affect bridging hypnosis technique went back to the original memory, triggered people, got them feeling the traumatic feelings. And the way we were taught it, because we all had the same course for certified hypnotherapists, is you go over that traumatic experience over and over and over until the negative emotion leaves. But she's talking about active intervention, which is actively saying this thing in my brain that thinks it's trying to help me is not, because it's not matching how things are now. So they call it a predictive error. She used that term because the theory there is my brain is predicting something bad will happen. It's in error because in reality, as adult, the bad thing won't happen, or if it happens, it's not going to be a big deal. Whereas as a kid, it was a much bigger deal because we were powerless, we were small, we were little, we were trapped in a home with dysfunctional parents or whatever. You got bullied and people were beating the crap out of you when you were 6 years old, and they were much bigger. Well, guess what? You don't walk down the street and have bullies beat the crap out of you when you're, unless you're in the worst part of the hood somewhere. That doesn't happen as an adult. So it's a prediction error. And so what scientists learn is you have to actively disconfirm that error, your brain is in error, and you have to actively disconfirm it. That's what Tim's talking about. That's what we do. But what she also doesn't mention is that there's neurochemicals that your brain is releasing that it's acetylcholine and epinephrine or norepinephrine. Typically both get released. And it actually opens this labo window she described where your brain becomes neuroplastic and the belief can change. And acetylcholine's tied to focus, and norepinephrine, epinephrine's tied to the emotion you feel. And when when it releases that, your brain is now able to unzip the zip file, open it up, go in and recode, make the changes. Well, that is amplified. That effect is amplified in hypnosis. It enhances access and recall to emotionality. And hypnosis is also inward focus, amplified inward focus. It's a special state. And then it gets rid of, when you're in hypnosis, the part of your brain called the critical factor, which interferes with things being changed, is shut down. So you're open to hypnotic suggestion. And so when we combine hypnosis with this process she's describing, it amplifies the effect of the process. And that's what science hasn't figured out. And so what we do is we take this specific protocol. It's called predictive error mismatch memory reconsolidation. That's the narrative part. We take the emotional memory part. There's a neuroscience process called polyvagal informed emotional memory reconsolidation. They're two separate things. We combine them together, amplify it with hypnosis. Boom, 5 times the effect these guys are getting, and these guys are getting 10 to 20 times the effect CBT gets. And that's why we've done it between us three, probably for 1,000 people at this point.
Yep.
And we are literally seeing effects 20, 50, 100. We're touching stuff normal therapy just can't touch in a million years. I know, because I did normal therapy on and off 100 sessions over 15 years. And then I did Melanie Tony Evans, she calls it quantum freedom healing. It's an emotional memory. It's an emotional memory reconsolidation technique. And within 2 months, all that depression, and others, not all the stuff, but all the depression and all the rage I had that normal therapy couldn't touch, boom, gone in less than 2 months. 15 years of therapy, the part it couldn't touch, gone in less than 2 months. And she was only doing emotional memory consolidation. She wasn't doing the narrative. That's Melanie Tony Evans' program. We then added this other stuff in, and we're getting 5 times the result Melanie gets, and her stuff's amazing. So, anything to add, guys?
No.
But this is a science. This is a hardcore science. We're showing it to you now. This is beyond cutting edge. And I guess probably a little more to watch, or you guys want to wrap it up? Any questions?
It would help if I unmuted myself.
There you go.
I want to hone in on this like predictive error, because error kind of implies that there's something wrong. There's a belief about, but like there's well,
the original program, that's true.
Well, I kind of like that language because it kind of implies that there's nothing inherently wrong with you. You don't have to prove to yourself that you're good enough. You don't have to prove to yourself that you can be safe and these things. It's built within you. And I like that frame of mind where it's literally a predictive error, meaning that it's not something that it's something that's incorrect. It's a mistake.
Incorrectly predicting things.
Right. Yeah. And I really like that frame of mind because it kind of inherently implies that you are good enough just the way you are, that you can be safe, that you can be loved, that you can be wanted and desired by others. And so I just wanted to throw that in there. I really think that frame of mind is really important going into this stuff.
It's the prediction that is an error.
Yeah. Correct. Very good.
That's all I had.
There's probably a little more to play. Well, we're about an hour in. Yeah. Maybe just play a little more because I think she says some stuff to kind of tie this up a little more. Watch it a couple minutes more, and then we'll play a little more and then wrap it up. Yeah, put it at 1 1/4 speed. Thanks.
And there's all sort of deep therapies that really help people transform their implicit beliefs, whether they think about it in terms of memory reconsolidation. When we look at what is happening, always what you find is both reactivation and disconfirmation. So for instance, forms of therapies where perhaps the client is guided to feel once again what it felt like to be young and to enter into that old reality and to feel it consciously, like I'm not safe if I share my feelings. That would be reactivation. And then the therapist is actively there, not judging their feelings, making it safe to have their emotions, and even calling their awareness to that. Like, notice, how is it though for me to be not judging you right now? And that would be a disconfirmation. In that moment, that schema that says, if I have my feelings, I'll be judged, so it isn't safe, actually could get updated. Or therapies that do inner child work, where you visualize maybe yourself at a certain age and really go in and ask, like, what is the view of reality that I learned at that age? And really making that view of reality conscious, that would be reactivation. And then perhaps the client themselves imagining going to that inner child, for instance, and telling them their version of reality, or just proving a different version of reality through being able to show up, so that that schema that I'm alone or I'm not lovable can be erased. So that would be activation and disconfirmation. So when the brain vividly witnesses 2 realities, the reality from the schema and the reality of what's actually happening in the moment, and those realities cannot actually both be true at the same time, it kind of freaks the brain out a little bit. It's like an error message gets sent, but in a good way. So the brain says, wait a second, I guess my predictive model is not doing such a great job predicting reality. It may be time for me to update it. Now, that's not going to happen if that original model isn't activated first. That's why these things have to have a sort of felt or visceral component to them. If it's just cognitive, that isn't enough. Or if we're having all these kind of disconfirming experiences, like I don't believe I'm of value, but I'm being valued by all these people, it may not necessarily land on the original memory or like the neural net that holds that memory, unless we first sort of activate that original net, really let it be felt and conscious. Then as new information comes in, if it feels like valid, compelling information, like through a lived experience or irrefutable proof, then that can come in and actually work to change the original schema. So when a reorganization happens on that implicit level like that, it produces transformational change, which is much more powerful than simply having to force ourselves into new behavioral habits, sort of against the will of some deeper part of our mind that's saying, don't do that. If you do that, it's going to lead to a bad outcome. If we don't address that original sort of belief.
Yeah, so that pretty much rounds it out pretty nicely. This is transformation that we're doing. And
hugging a rock?
I don't know, man. Look at that. That's weird.
Sure, what
the heck is that, man?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah.
Of course, this is relieving the trauma, taking the rocks out of your backpack.
I guess it's letting go of the rock. I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, but
anyway, go ahead.
So yeah, we're talking about by the way, she's talking about these other therapies. Now, there's internal family systems, which I would say mostly does this. Again, absent hypnosis. Although, just by doing this, you kind of enter a light trance just by recalling your emotions and going inward, going back to your childhood, etc. We do inner child work in every session, bar none. Yep. Would you guys agree?
Absolutely.
So we do Gestalt when appropriate. I'd say probably a third of my clients, I have them have a conversation with themselves. What they're doing is they're having conversation with sub-personalities that are these defense mechanisms, among other things. So internal family systems, that's IFS right there, addressing our sub-personalities that are trying to protect us or serve different functions in our subconscious. Again, internal family systems, about 80% of the way there, doesn't do hypnosis, doesn't amplify the effect. Maybe it's 90%. EMDR does this in some instances and doesn't in others. EMDR, not that great for rewiring core beliefs, but more surface level or PTSD, but not complex PTSD, it's pretty good at. So EMDR is kind of like 60 to 80, 70% of the way there. Yeah. What else? She's big on coherence therapy, which is like 95% of the way there. But again, no hypnosis, to amplify the effect, although they are in a light trance with coherence therapy. This lady teaches coherence therapy. Coherence therapy, there's some polyvagal informed somatic experiencing that they don't cover very much with coherence therapy, and it doesn't do hypnosis. It does everything else wonderfully, marvelously. And so I'd say for the non-hypnosis stuff, again, if you look at us as a hypnotist, no, we're hypnotists that do all this other stuff that hypnotists don't do. Like we get way stronger results than average hypnotists, although average hypnotists can still get some really good results. So these other therapies she's mentioning, I'm putting a name on them. Coherence therapy. There's something called emotional rescripting, the EMDR, eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. That's actually being taught in a few dozen universities now. EMDR is, but, again, it's been around 30, 40 years. Internal family system been around 35 years. I don't know if any universities are teaching IFS. So a lot of these therapies have kind of mostly got it. Coherence therapy pretty much completely got it, has it, but can do other stuff to augment it, which we do, and coherence therapy doesn't. Coherence therapy is great, though, and everything else she said is spot on. Let's transform your core. And the entire lens through which you look at life changes in the best way possible. Anxiety goes way down, and oftentimes it's just gone. Anger, depression, all these other things that plague people, self-sabotage, procrastination, it all goes to 0 or 90% down. And I'm speaking in very broad terms, but when you transform, and people tell me, I'm sure it's happened with you guys, they're like, I'm in this position, I normally get freaked out, and now I just feel normal.
Always.
And they're like, what the hell is going on? This used to freak the hell. This is your wife, by the way. This is your wife, Carrie, experiencing
Absolutely.
this. things in the past that made them lose their crap or get angry or freeze or shut down or get depressed or whatever. This was my experience. I did this for myself. Now the exact same thing happens. You're like, that's
you don't even hardly notice it.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember, I think I've told you guys this story. I don't know if I told our audience this story. It's maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago. I was living in Texas. My parents lived in Oklahoma. Every now and then they come down to visit. So they did. My mom and dad were there. We had dinner. They're on their way to visit my uncle who lived close by, hour away from me. So we had dinner. And my mom's doing what she's doing. Narcissists get narcissistic supply. And if they can't get like a ridiculously high amount of praise from you, validation, then what they're going to do is they're going to power trip off of manipulating you, making you feel bad because it makes them feel powerful. It's an emotional bullying tactic. And so I'm at dinner with them. I'd long since cleared my trauma, everything tied to her. And throughout the night, she's just putting in these little insidious, passive-aggressive attacks, digs, criticisms, in kind of the insidious, sideways, semi-camouflage, veiled way that she does. She's not like outright insulting. She's insulting you without directly insulting me. Doing it throughout the night, I just don't care. In the past, it would mess me up. I get hurt, and she get her narcissistic supply. Look, I'm not... And to her, it's like, look, I'm not insignificant, invisible, powerless. I have power. Look, I'm exercising my power on this person. It's messing them up. I see it's having an effect on them. I feel more powerful. That's why they do that. That's why narcissists are so terrible in so many ways. And I just don't care. She's doing all these things to make me feel bad. I just don't care. Like, I'm literally barely noticing it. And after about 15 minutes, I'm talking to my dad about 15 minutes, I feel her eyes on me. And I look over and she's looking at me like, like her head's cocked back and her mouth is open. And she's like confused. And I'm like, I know exactly what's going on. She's been trying to mess with me all night and I just don't give a shit. And I'm like, this is my victory. Like, I almost laughed in her face. Like, I kept it together. But it's like she realizes she has no power. And the look on her face is, what do I have to do to get to this guy? Nothing's working. In the past, it worked because I had my trauma. That trauma was gone. I did not give two shits. And it was a feeling of this is a moment of victory right here. It was amazing. That's the point we get people to. Transformation. Anything to add, guys? Any final thoughts?
No, you nailed it, man. I'm good.
All right. Anything, Jordan?
I just gonna add that I liked how she was talking about how, like, unless you activate, she threw you a bone, Ryan, a little bit. She was like, unless you activate the emotion, it's like she used this hand gesture where it was like, you're in an environment where everyone is accepting of you, but you don't feel like you deserve it. And so it's just kind of falling flat. It's not actually getting in there. And so she's like, unless you activate the emotions, and it's like and the feelings behind it, you're not actually going to get in there and change anything. So
that's right.
And great point. And next week we're going to do a show on imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is people who are CEOs, multimillionaires, entrepreneurs, kicking ass in life, and everyone's like, this person's so great, they're doing so awesome. But despite all their success, they feel like a fraud. They feel not good enough, which proves that all this outside stuff does not fix you. This is what fixes you right here, right now, what we are talking about. So we'll cover that next week. You have monks sitting on some hill somewhere meditating, reaching a level of internal joy and happiness that a billionaire has never felt ever. Because it's an inside job, and this is the way to do it. The techniques this lady is talking about, again, we do some additional stuff to augment it further and amplify it. But the core of what we do to get the transformation, the science behind it, scientists know it. All the clinical trials have been done. maybe 5% of psychologists practice it, even though the science has been out for 25 years. What the hell? Ridiculous. They already know it works. They're not doing it. So we'll do it and we'll take it to the world.
That's it.
So you take advantage of everyone listening. You can improve your life further massively with these techniques. Even if you're doing okay overall, we can get you from okay to awesome. You really can do it. You have more power than you know. That's our show. Thank you.